For years, I believed I had the perfect marriage. My wife, Emily, was everything I had ever wanted: intelligent, charming, and incredibly supportive. We had built a comfortable life together, filled with vacations, laughter, and late-night talks about our future. Sure, there were moments when she seemed distant, but I always dismissed them as stress from her demanding job. After all, who doesn't have rough patches in a marriage? One evening, Emily came home with an excited look on her face. She told me she had been offered an incredible opportunity, a business trip to London. All expenses paid, courtesy of her company. It was a rare chance to network with international clients, and she insisted that it would be great for her career. I was happy for her, though a part of me wished she didn't have to leave. The night before her flight, we had dinner together at our favorite restaurant. She was radiant, dressed in the blue dress I had bought her on our anniversary. We toasted to her success, and she reassured me, "It's just a week, honey. I'll be back before you know it." The next morning, I drove her to the airport. As she pulled her suitcase out of the trunk, she kissed me gently on the cheek. "I love you," she whispered, looking me in the eyes. "I love you too," I replied, watching as she disappeared into the terminal. At that moment, I had no idea that it would be the last time I'd ever see her, or at least, that's what I was meant to believe. The day after Emily's departure, I went about my routine as usual. I made coffee, scrolled through the news, and even smiled at the thought of her exploring London. But then, everything changed. As I was getting ready for work, a breaking news alert flashed across my phone screen. Flight 327 from New York to London has crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. No survivors reported. My heart stopped. My hands trembled as I fumbled to check the flight details again. It couldn't be. Emily was on that flight. I felt a cold wave of nausea wash over me, my knees threatening to give out beneath me. My mind raced with disbelief, desperately clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she had missed her flight. But deep down, I knew the truth. Within hours, my home was flooded with condolences. Friends, family, and colleagues reached out with messages of sympathy. The airline called, confirming that Emily was on the passenger manifest. I was numb, unable to process the reality that my wife, the woman I had kissed goodbye just a day ago, was gone forever. The following weeks felt like a blur. The airline arranged a memorial service for the victims. A framed picture of Emily was placed among the others, surrounded by candles and grieving families. I stood there, staring at her smiling face, unable to comprehend how everything had changed so suddenly. Then came the legal matters, endless paperwork, insurance claims, and official death certificates. The life insurance payout arrived faster than I had expected, as if the world had already accepted her death while I was still struggling to believe it. I signed the documents mechanically, not caring about the money. What was the point? No amount of compensation could bring back the woman I loved. For months, I lived in a fog of grief. The house felt unbearably empty. Her clothes still hung in the closet, her perfume still lingered in the air. Every night, I reached for the empty side of the bed, half expecting to feel her warmth. But she was gone. At least, that's what I thought. Months passed, but the pain never truly faded. I learned to function, waking up, going to work, responding with the obligatory, "I'm doing okay," whenever someone asked. But deep inside, I was hollow. I had accepted my fate, Emily was gone, and I had to move forward. At least, that's what I kept telling myself, until the night I saw the first crack in the illusion. It happened unexpectedly. I was going through our old documents, sorting out what to keep and what to finally let go of. Among the stacks of bills and bank statements, my eyes landed on something strange, a recent charge on Emily's credit card. My breath caught in my throat. That wasn't possible. Her accounts should have been frozen after her passing. But there it was, a transaction from just 2 days ago, in Paris. A hotel charge, under her name. I tried to convince myself it was a clerical error. Maybe it was just a delayed transaction processing through the bank. But the sinking feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. My hands trembled as I opened my laptop and logged into our joint account. I scrolled through the transactions, each one a punch to my chest. Dinners at high-end restaurants. Luxury boutiques. A spa reservation. All recent. All in Paris. My mind raced with possibilities. Could someone have stolen her identity? Was this some cruel mistake? But then, I saw the one thing that shattered any illusions I had left, a charge for 2 plane tickets. One for a woman named Emily Carter. The other for a man named Daniel Blake. The air was sucked from my lungs. I stared at the screen, unable to move. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't identity theft. Emily was alive. And worse, she hadn't just abandoned me, she had planned this. Every little detail, from her fake death to cashing in on the insurance money, had been deliberate. And she had done it all with another man. A slow, burning rage ignited inside me, replacing the grief that had consumed me for months. My wife hadn't died in a tragic accident, she had orchestrated the entire thing. She had left me grieving, drowning in sorrow, while she enjoyed a new life with her lover. Spending money that wasn't hers to take. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. The moment I realized Emily was alive, something inside me shifted. The grief that had consumed me for months turned into a singular, burning purpose. I needed to find her. I needed to know why she did this, how long she had planned it, and most importantly, I needed to make sure she paid for what she had done. I started my investigation the only way I knew how, by tracking her movements. The bank statements gave me my first clue, Paris. That was where she had been using her card. Dining at Michelin-starred restaurants, staying at luxury hotels, and indulging in the kind of lavish lifestyle we had always joked about but never lived. She was spending my money, the insurance payout from her so-called death. I didn't trust myself to confront her alone. I needed proof, something that would hold up legally. So I did what any man seeking revenge in a world built on information would do. I hired a private investigator. The PI, a grizzled man named Carter, listened patiently as I laid out my story. His expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker of intrigue in his eyes when I mentioned the plane crash and the fraudulent insurance claim. "This is big," he muttered, jotting down notes. "If she faked her death and took the insurance money, that's fraud. If she conspired with someone else, it's even worse." For the next few days, I waited anxiously as Carter did his work. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. "You were right," he said without preamble. "She's in Paris. And she's not hiding." My heart pounded as I opened the email he sent. Photos. Crystal clear images of Emily, very much alive, strolling through the streets of Paris, hand in hand with a tall, well-dressed man. Daniel Blake. The man she had bought the second plane ticket for. I stared at the images, my blood boiling. She looked happy. Carefree. Not like someone who had just lost a husband in a tragic accident. Not like someone grieving. She was laughing. Wrapped around another man's arm, sipping wine at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Eiffel Tower. That was the moment I decided, I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to destroy her. Rage alone wasn't enough. I couldn't just show up in Paris, storm into a restaurant, and scream at Emily for faking her death. That wouldn't get me justice, it would only make me look like a madman. No, I needed to be smart. I needed to set a trap so perfect that when it closed around her, she wouldn't have a way out. I spent the next few days working closely with Carter, my private investigator, piecing together a plan. The key was money, her ultimate motive. If she thought there was more to gain, she would take the bait. And I had the perfect way to lure her in. Using one of my old business contacts, I created the illusion of a wealthy investor looking for discreet clients in need of laundering large sums of money. A businessman who wouldn't ask questions about where the money came from, as long as there was a high return. A perfect opportunity for someone like Emily, who had just committed insurance fraud and needed to secure her stolen wealth. Carter found the perfect way to reach her, a high-end investment firm in Paris, where she and Daniel were trying to move their money under new identities. We arranged for an anonymous message to be sent to her, an invitation to a private investment meeting with an ultra-rich financier willing to make people like her very rich and very safe. We didn't have to wait long. She bit the bait instantly. A message came through, Emily Carter, or rather, Sophia Loren, as she now called herself, and her fiancé Daniel Blake would be delighted to meet the investor in person to discuss a high-value investment opportunity. I almost laughed when I read the email. After everything, she was still greedy enough to walk right into a trap. She thought she was winning. She had no idea. Carter set up the meeting at an exclusive 5-star hotel, the kind where only the wealthiest could get a reservation. I would be the investor. I would be the one sitting across from her at the negotiation table. And when she walked in expecting to secure her future, she would find the husband she had left for dead waiting for her instead. The night of the meeting, I sat in the private lounge of the 5-star hotel, dressed in an expensive suit, my face calm but my blood boiling beneath the surface. Across the table, a bottle of vintage champagne chilled in a bucket of ice, the kind of luxury Emily had always dreamed of. Everything was meticulously arranged, the setting, the trap, and the moment she would see me. The door opened. My heart pounded as Emily walked in hand with Daniel. She looked exactly as I remembered her, yet so different. Her blonde hair was styled in soft waves, her skin glowing under the dim lighting. She wore a sleek designer dress, a picture of wealth and sophistication. She had reinvented herself, stepping fully into her new life, believing she had erased her past. But when her eyes met mine, her entire world collapsed. Her smile froze. Her hand, which had been resting on Daniel's arm, clenched. Her breath caught in her throat as she blinked, as if trying to convince herself that I wasn't real, that I was still dead. For a brief moment, there was only silence. Stunned, paralyzing silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she breathed out, "No. That's not possible." Daniel turned to her, confused. "What's wrong?" he asked, looking between us. He had no idea. He had no clue that the man sitting across from him was the husband of the woman he was planning to spend the rest of his life with. I leaned forward, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "Hello, Emily." My voice was even, controlled, but I knew she could hear the restrained fury beneath it. Her face drained of color. Her fingers trembled. I had one. For the first time. I saw fear in her eyes. Not the kind of fear that comes from danger, but the kind that comes when a person realizes they are completely and utterly screwed. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Please, sit. We have a lot to talk about." Daniel, still oblivious, chuckled nervously. "I think there's been a mistake. My fiancée's name is Sophia. Not." I turned to him sharply. "Shut up." The sharpness in my tone silenced him instantly. I turned back to Emily, my gaze cold. "I know everything. I know you faked your death. I know you stole the insurance money. And I know you planned all of this with him." I gestured toward Daniel, who was still catching up to what was happening. Emily's eyes darted toward the exit. She was already calculating her escape. I smirked. "Oh, don't bother running. It's too late for that." Her breath hitched. She knew what was coming. She could feel it in the air. This wasn't just a confrontation. This was the beginning of her downfall. Emily sat down slowly, her hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly that her knuckles turned white. I could see her mind racing, desperately trying to come up with a way out. But there was none. Not this time. Daniel, still clueless, glanced between us. What the hell is going on? His voice was tinged with irritation, but mostly confusion. I leaned back, exuding an unsettling calm. Oh, she hasn't told you, has she? I turned to Emily, savoring the way her composure began to crumble. Go ahead, sweetheart. Tell your fiancé who I am. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I could see the sweat beginning to form at her temple. Daniel frowned. Emily, what is he talking about? I scoffed. Emily? Is that what she told you her name was? That's funny. Because the last time I checked, her name was Emily Carter. My wife. The blood drained from Daniel's face. He stiffened, his body language shifting from confusion to suspicion. He turned sharply to Emily, his voice colder now. What is he saying? Emily shook her head rapidly. It's not what it looks like, Daniel. I cut her off, throwing a folder onto the table. It slid toward them, flipping open to reveal photos, bank statements, and documents proving every single one of her lies. Not what it looks like. I repeated mockingly. So, you didn't fake your death? You didn't steal my money? You didn't vanish while I was mourning you? Only to run off to Paris and start a new life with him? Daniel stared at the papers, his hands shaking as he flipped through them. Photos of Emily and him, hotel receipts, flight records. A copy of the insurance payout in my name that she had stolen. It was all there. Undeniable. He suddenly shoved back his chair, standing up so fast that it nearly tipped over. His breathing was heavy, his face twisted in disgust. You told me you were widowed. That your husband died in a car accident. You said. He stopped himself. Realization dawning on him as he put the pieces together. Emily's breathing turned shallow. She reached out to him. Daniel, please. He yanked his arm away. You used me, he muttered. His voice thick with betrayal. You played me like you played him. He turned to me, anger now shifting toward her. How long have you known? I smiled. Long enough. Daniel clenched his jaw, stepping away from Emily as though she were toxic. And she was. Her world was falling apart right in front of her, and she knew it. But I wasn't done yet. I slowly pulled out my phone and placed it on the table, turning the screen toward her. A recording was playing. Emily's voice filled the air. Her own voice. Once the insurance money clears, we leave. He'll never see it coming. He's so damn gullible. Emily's face went ghostly pale. She shot up from her chair. You recorded everything? I finished for her, my voice full of satisfaction. Yes. I did. I leaned forward, my tone dropping lower. I told you, Emily. You weren't going to get away with this. And then, just as she opened her mouth to spew another lie, the door to the lounge burst open. Two uniformed officers strode in, their expressions firm, their hands resting on their holstered weapons. Emily turned to me, panic flooding her face. No, please, you can't. I tilted my head. Oh, but I can. One officer stepped forward. Emily Carter, you are under arrest for insurance fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Emily collapsed back into her chair, her face contorted with horror. Daniel took a step away from her, shaking his head. I can't believe I almost married you. As the officers pulled out the cuffs, I watched the last remnants of Emily's carefully constructed lies fall apart. She was finished. And justice was finally served. As the officers cuffed Emily and read her rights, she didn't resist. She just sat there, completely broken, as the weight of her actions came crashing down on her. The confident, manipulative woman who had orchestrated her own death to steal from me was gone. In her place was someone who finally realized she had lost everything. Daniel, still processing the betrayal, muttered something under his breath before walking out, leaving her behind. I didn't blame him. He was just another pawn in her game, until she lost control. I watched as the officers led her away, her once perfect life unraveling in front of her. This was the moment I had waited for. The moment she realized I wasn't the gullible fool she thought I was. And as she was dragged past me, her eyes met mine one last time. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry." I just smiled. "No, Emily. You're just sorry you got caught." And with that, she was gone. That day, I walked out of that hotel a free man. Free from her lies, free from the pain she caused, and most importantly, free to start over. I had lost my wife. But the truth was, I had lost her long before she ever died. The woman I married had never truly existed. She was nothing more than a mask, one that she wore until she saw a better opportunity. But in the end, she wasn't the one who won. I was. Justice was served, and now, it was time for me to finally live my life. Fire, what do you guys think? Would you have done the same in my position? Let me know in the comments. Speech balloon, have you ever heard of someone pulling off a crazy scam like this? Drop your wildest stories below, I'd love to read them. Thumbs up if you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to give it a like. Loudspeaker, and if you love justice stories, betrayals, and epic revenge, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Rocket, share this video with your friends, who knows, maybe they've got a crazy story of their own. Thanks for watching, and remember, karma always comes around. See you in the next one. Eyes fire.